Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by my good friend and esteemed colleague, Jeff Howe, also a fellow football theorist. I should throw that out there as well. On this episode of Football Theory, it's kind of one of my favorite kind of end of the year traditions because we just had the Super Bowl. It's the last football game for a little while. And I like to look at lessons learned. So I figure every football fan, college, pro, high school, everybody watches the Super Bowl. So I want to talk about lessons that Texas football can learn from, obviously, the biggest football game on the planet, which is the Super Bowl. And congrats to the Seattle Seahawks. So I'll throw it to you, Jeff, because I think we've been doing this for a little while, too. Let's talk about what you learned from the Super Bowl that can apply to the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, less of revelation and more of a further confirmation. You kind of got me down this line of thinking, Rod, a couple years ago, and I think last year's Super Bowl, when we saw how the Eagles beat the Chiefs, which, hey, it's real similar to how you look at baseball, where it doesn't matter how good your lineup is, great pitching is going to beat great hitting. Elite pressure in football is going to beat great protection. Just period, point blank, end of story. If you have the ability to get after the quarterback at an elite clip, that's going to win. And man, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I keep trying to find reasons why Sark made the change he made. Last week on Football Theory, we talked about Will Muschamp's ability to mix fronts and be creative, and a lot of that's going to depend on Ian Jaffard and Zion Williams, and how often can you play an odd front. And I'd encourage everybody to go back and listen to that if you haven't already. Check it out if you haven't already. But I think it's Sark made that move because he doesn't want to leave any meat on the bone with Colin Simmons probably in his last year, and the number of pass rushers, the number of guys that you have with the potential to get after the quarterback that you've got on this roster. I don't think he wants to leave any of that on the bone. And you look at from multiple spots, Roddy, even though you lose Ethan Burke and Anthony Hill and Trey Moore, I mean, that's three really good pass rush pieces you've got. But the Justice Terry being a year older, Lance Jackson being a year older, Brad Spence now with a year in the program. Obviously, Colin Simmons, you probably got the best pass rusher, the best pure pass rusher in the country. And then what you can do on the interior, whether, you're talking about Hero Kanu can rush the passer, Alex January can rush the passer, just going down the line. I just think it's the ability Texas has to constantly disrupt the quarterback, and the fact that Will Muschamp can do it in a lot of different ways now. That to me just kind of reinforces the Super Bowl, reinforced to me, kind of like the national championship game. Yeah, this is why Sark made that move, because he wants to wreak havoc on opposing quarterbacks, and he feels like Will Muschamp's got the plan to do it.
Yeah, and you're right. For 2 years in a row, right? I always say, I'm not the only one, of course. I got it from another coach, but I don't give a damn how good your coverage is. Protection beats coverage, no doubt about it. But pressure will beat protection if you build it strong enough. And that's what we've seen from the last two Super Bowl champions. And we've actually seen it from Texas too at times, because a guy like Byron Murphy, he's one of the, I think, integral pieces to that Seahawks defense. And he was one of the, I think, I don't know, what's the best way to put it? It was basically for Texas, foreshadowing. He was kind of showing the future of, I think, modern defense, which is, you got to get pressure not only on the edges, but you got to get in the interior as well. And I think that's the lesson for Texas. You got to get back to that. When Byron Murphy was on the 40 acres, I always give this stat. You had 120 in 2023. You had 126 pressures from the D tackle position alone, and in 2025 you had 53.
Yeah,
nothing against that group, but you got to get back to getting some pressure from your D tackles, and that's what New England did it really well. So did Seattle. Seattle was, I believe, you go look at, they were number 2 overall in the NFL with pressures produced from their starting D tackle duo. That's what Texas, I think, guy has to learn. I think at utmost, more than anything, is get back to that. And you stockpiled it. Matter of fact, you're better than any other program in the country, arguably, other than Alabama, at producing really good D tackles. Hell, you had 3 of them that were showcased in the Final Four of the NFL with Malcolm Roach and Byron Murphy and Poner Ford. I think that's what I want to see from this group. And I think that, and part of why I think Muschamp, when he first got here, went after another edge rusher is because I think he's thinking along the lines you were. I got to stockpile the D-line. On the D-line, you need guys that can win one-on-ones. That's what the Eagles had, and they whipped Kansas City, and that's what Seattle had, and they whipped the Patriots. You got guys up front that can win one-on-ones, and what does that mean? Especially if you got the D tackles. That's the key. Because that's the key. Then you do exactly what the Eagles did 2 years ago, exactly what Seattle did. That means you don't have to blitz to apply pressure. The Eagles blitzed 0 times in that game versus Kansas City and whipped them. In this game, I believe the blitz rate for Seattle was around between 13 and 15%. Very low, even lower than their season average, actually. But they didn't have to, because they got guys up front that can win one-on-ones. They can get pressure with just their front four, and they can stop the run with just their front four, because their guys up front can win one-on-one. And what that allowed them to do? Play too high and win the numbers game in the passing game. And so Texas, if you want to get back to that blueprint, win the numbers game in the passing game, you need your D-line to be more dominant so you can stop the run with the light box. Nobody in the country was better at it in 2023 when you had Byron Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat.
And what you said there at the end is, I think that's, the lasting impact of Pete Kwiatkowski as the defensive coordinator, Rod. I think that's it, because we saw his best defenses at Washington and his best defenses at Texas, I think, had one thing in common, is that you could win the numbers. You could win against the run playing a light box. And you can only do that, though, when you've got guys that can win one-on-ones. Now, you've got to, when the talent evens out, like we talked about last week, when the talent evens out, what's your counterpunch? Like, if you're a great pitcher, and I fired up for baseball season, that's why I keep using baseball analogies on this show. But, hey, you may be able to get by, even if you're a dominant starting pitcher, right? You may be able to get by most of the teams you face on, like, your Friday night starter in college. He may go through most of his outings early in the season. He may use 2 pitches, right? He may use a fastball and whatever that secondary pitch. You you play a really good SEC lineup, a powerful lineup like Texas has, that 1 through 9 is going to be able to hit. All right, now you probably need your 3rd pitch. And depending on how good that lineup is, if they've got, like a Carson Tenney, a guy that can mash, if you've got that 4th pitch, you may need to use it. So what's that 3rd pitch? What's that 4th pitch? I don't know that PK, either he didn't have it or he didn't develop it or didn't think he needed it. Will Muschamp's ability to go into his bag, I think, is what again, that's what Sark's doing. And the other thing, Rod, when we talk about protection versus pressure in the Super Bowl, it reinforced to me the Patriots way overthought it when they took Will Campbell over Kelvin Banks, because, his arms are too short. He's got short arms, but you know what? I watched for 3 years. I watched that guy go against multiple first rounders as a true freshman, going against Will Anderson in his second game in college football, and more than held his own. So, and Kelvin Banks had a really good rookie season with the Saints. So, I don't know if he'd have made the difference as tough as the Patriots had it, but I'm sure there's a lot of Patriots fans probably looking back at that decision. Like, if you had a do-over, maybe you'd have done that over and taken Kelvin Banks over Will Campbell.
I will say, since we're talking about lessons learned from the Super Bowl, because I agree with you, by the way, 100%. Devon Witherspoon revealed after the game that their coaching staff, Mike McDonald and company, did find tails on the offensive line and in the pass protections that they believed gave them a significant advantage. Is that basically that somehow they were giving up their pass protection techniques, or at least revealing it, their pass protection techniques and their pass protection schemes prior to the snap, based on the formation and based on the front that was presented to them by Seattle. So he said that after the game, and I was like, man, he revealed that. And I'll just say this, since we're talking about lessons learned, I've always felt like basically Kirby Smart had that against Texas.
Yeah.
I always feel like he knew something. I guess it's conspiracy theory. It's conspiracy theory. but no, think about what was the numbers that Texas that they averaged in them 3 games. They averaged almost 30 pressures in those 3 games. I'm talking about average per game.
I hate even to think back to it, because it was like a ridiculous compared to the rest of the sample the last 2 years. Averaged over 10 half tackles for loss, averaged over 5 sacks, and averaged over 28 pressure, or at least averaged 28 pressures, I should say, and averaged 1 yard per rush. I always feel like, I think Kirby, he knows one of those. But my point is, Muschamp can now tell Sark. Now Muschamp go, we had a tell. We didn't want to tell you, but we had a tell. I feel like that's the only way you can whip Texas like that and have that much production, right? In those same key areas.
So just put that out there too, because that's Super Bowl related as well. All right. Also, I want to say this. Not everybody, the world has caught on. Because I'll say, Jeff, and you're my witness. I was saying it 5 years ago. We were talking about it probably 5 years ago on the Blitz. D tackle is a premium position.
Yeah.
It is now official. I kept hearing it after the Super Bowl. I was like, D tackle should be a premium position. I was like, hey, I think I heard that somewhere before. Oh, that's right. We've been talking about that for a while now. D tackle is a premium position, and it is now. And shout out to Byron Murphy because he's at the forefront of that. Shout out to Texas because Texas football is at the forefront of that. Texas has been doing as good as any program in the country producing D tackles lately.
Yeah, really even in the lean years, Hassan Ridgeway was. If it wasn't for Hassan Ridgeway, Texas would have gone over in the 16th draft. Yeah. So you produced, and Malcolm Roach is an undrafted free agent, free agent, by the way, in that he was in the 2020 draft cycle. Because of the pandemic, you didn't have pro days and all this other stuff. Made it as an undrafted free agent in the toughest year, I think, to make an NFL roster as an undrafted free agent because you really couldn't market yourself like you normally would. So yeah, Texas has produced defensive tackles. The other thing I would say too, Rod, one of the big lessons learned is when we talk about protection, the Texas offensive line, a question mark, a concern, a red flag, a wild card, whatever label you want to put on it, it's going to be that until it proves it's not. Right. Like it's just, there's no magic button, no magic wand they're going to wave, magic button they can press. That's just suddenly going to make everybody feel better about the offensive line. Especially when you're going to go through a spring, that offensive line is not going to be whole because we know Trevor Gooseby may miss most of, if not all of spring ball recovering from that shoulder cleanup. Like he may get back at some point, he may not. But when we talk about protection, I think one of the underrated things, a lot of people look at Sam Darnold's numbers. I was like, well, he didn't play very well. It's kind of a mid-type game. Yeah, but I think the one thing he did was he did a really good job of just minimizing bad plays. Like in that game, a throwaway was a really good play. Yep. And that's why some of the, his completion percentage numbers are out of whack. But I just went back, Rod, and I looked at Arch and, the job Arch did. According to Pro Football Focus, I just looked at, your pressure to sack ratio, which that's those statistics that we talk about a lot. Like, and you may get pressured a lot, and Arch got pressured almost as much as any quarterback in FBS last year. He's pressured on 35.6% of his dropbacks. That means more than a third of the time he's dropping back, he's getting some kind of pressure. His pressure to sack rate I looked at FBS quarterbacks that had at least 50 dropbacks where they face some kind of pressure. So PFF says, hey, that's a drop back where you face pressure. And I did a minimum of 50 dropbacks. Whereas Arch was tied with Diego Pavia and Connor Wigman for the 32nd best pressure to sack rate in the country last year, 13.3%. So, and when we think about Diego Pavia, like, oh man, he's got, he's a scrambler. He's got the ability to get out of pressure. He's so great at it. Yeah. We need to talk about Arch like that too, because Arch did a really good job of avoiding pressure and not getting sacked. And as much pressure as he was under, Rod, the turnover factor. You realize he only had two fumbles all year and lost none. It's the first season a Texas quarterback, the guy who took the majority of the snaps as your starting quarterback. It's the first time a Texas starting quarterback has gone a full season without a fumble since Sam Ehlinger in 2020, and that was a 10-game season because of the pandemic. So, I mean, Casey Thompson, the 3 Quinn Ewers years. I mean, Quinn Ewers in 2024, 7 fumbles, lost 5. I mean, that was just the offense as a whole turned the ball over. But, Arch with only 7 turnovers, that's all 7 interceptions. His ability to minimize the negative play, especially going into this year where you've got an offensive line situation where, hey, you're going to be dealing with pressure in some way, shape, or form against some of and you're going to play some really aggressive defensive fronts that like to get after it. Like, I don't know, Matt Patricia, we could see something drastically different from him. I would expect to see something different from him than what Texas got in the game last year. Blake Baker at LSU, they'll throw a lot of bodies at you.
Jim knows.
Pete Golding at Ole Miss, they're going to throw.
Going to do some crazy stuff.
Yeah, we'll see what Florida does. They've got the bodies to throw a lot of pressure. So, especially in SEC play, like Arch is going to face pressure again. If he can replicate this, Rod, only turning the ball over 7 times while being and avoiding a bunch of sacks while being one of the most pressured quarterbacks in FBS. I don't care. And it goes into the bigger picture of what the Super Bowl reinforced, kind of like Indiana win the national championship. I don't care what era of football you're in. If you can run the ball reasonably well, if you can stop the run reasonably well, you've got the ability to disrupt the quarterback. You take care of the football, and you don't shoot yourself in the foot with a bunch of penalties, you're going to give yourself a chance every game. I don't care what era of football you're talking about, what your competition is. You take care of the football, win the line of scrimmage, you're going to give yourself a chance.
I think a lot of people, because, I've talked about how great he is at scrambling, and he's averaging, over 9 yards per scramble versus Power 4 teams. So he's really good in scrambling. We saw that in the Michigan game, most scrambles and most scramble yards and attempts by him all season. And I think he's elite in there, even scramble drill, averaging 11 yards per attempt. But that's not the same as sack avoidance. And I think he's great at both. I'm with you. I think you're going to look at his sack avoidance ability, his ability to really, mitigate risk, I guess is the best way to put it. He does a great job at mitigating risk, whether that be the sack or whether that be the turnover, fumbles, whatever it is. And considering how under pressure he was one of the top 10 most pressured quarterbacks, essentially in major college football. I'm with you. I think he's exceptional in that category, and I think we'll see more of it this year. So I agree with you on that. And Sam Darnold, he was really good at avoiding some of those bad plays. I don't think Drake May used his legs enough because he was one of the best scrambling quarterbacks in all the NFL. I think if he'd have used that ability more early on, I think that could have been something that helped the Patriots. All right, moving on, because I know we're getting close to the end of things here. A couple of things that I think for Sark he can learn. And I always say this, just reiterating something that I've been saying for years. To win big games, you got to break tendency. And we've seen that against Texas. Hell, Kirby Smart kicked his first onside kick, and since he's been with the Georgia program against Texas, helped him win the damn game. All right, had a fake punt against Texas at the SEC title game, helped him win the damn game. Jim Knowles admitted, right, he had 2 red zone defenses that he hadn't called all year long that helped him get the strip sack, fumble return for a touchdown against Texas. Right, break tendency at the right time. It does help in big games. In this game, Devon Witherspoon, how about this? 21 pass rush snaps in the regular season, and he ended up with 6 of them, all right, in that game.
Yeah.
So talk about breaking tendency. He had 6 B-gap blitzes as a DB all season long and had 6 of them also in the Super Bowl. 22% of all his pass rush snaps came in the Super Bowl. And by the way, those 6 pass rush snaps, 4 pressures, 1 sack, also had the forced pick 6, whatever you want to call it. He was a beast. My point being, Sark's got to do more of that. I've been preaching it forever. Sark's got to break tendency in big games. He doesn't do enough of that. And for people who study Sark like you and I do, you got to name me the time where he broke tendency in big games to help him win the big games. He's done it a couple of times, but not enough in those big games. That's something I think Sark's got to continue to learn to get better, because he's seeing it because teams are beating him by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you're losing some of your biggest games, because teams are breaking tendency at the perfect time to tip the scales.
There's comfort in, hey, we've got these certain things that we do, and if we execute them the way we can run them against anybody. And I like that, because you got to have staples in your offense. But again, kind of like talk about with the defense, you're gonna get to a point where the talent levels out, and you can't just out talent people. And then what's your counterpunch? Because they're going to game plan for you, especially when you get into high leverage games like CFP semifinal games. You got to go deep in your bag. And where you said Jim Knowles had 2 that, hey, I got these stored way back, haven't used them yet. Sark even admitted kind of ran out of stuff. You can't get back to that point and run out of stuff. You just can't.
Yep, totally agree. Another thing I learned from Super Bowl that I think Sark can learn, and I always say it, play the hits. Sark's getting much better at playing the hits, by the way. When something's working now, you will see Sark go back to it. I like to see more of it. But we even saw it this year, right? How many times he won the quick screen versus Vanderbilt because they just couldn't stop it. Hell, he ran the same damn concept for 5 straight weeks on the first play of the game because he's like, it's working for us. Let's do it. So Sark is getting better at playing the hits. I do not want to discount that. But he can even better. In that game, they attacked that B gap with that same B gap blitz over and over and over again. And that was kind of how they played the hits. They a lot of it was directed, obviously, at the Patriots and their poor pass protection. They never could adjust to it. That's, I think, something Sark's got to learn, too, that when you find a weakness, until they fix it, and if they don't fix it, they may lose in the game, just like the Patriots. They couldn't fix it. They couldn't fix it. Seattle basically spammed their offensive line with it and just kept running that B gap pressure, that smack blitz. I think Sark could learn from that. Once you see a weakness, even if it's a small one, keep tugging on that thing because it may the whole damn thing may unravel. And I think we saw that a couple of times versus Georgia. He would see something that worked, but he would not be stubborn about it and be an extremist about it. I want to see more of that from Sark when you're a tactician and you figure out, oh, I found something. Don't let them off the hook. Don't let them off the hook. Yeah, Mike McDonald, he ain't let Page off. He's like, y'all gonna fix it. If y'all don't fix it, I'm gonna keep doing it. They never fixed it. Done.
There's been a couple losses in Sark's tenure. The TCU one in 2022 sticks out where it's like, man, you figured it out. You just figured it out too late.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to, and I think he's gotten better with that. And to your point, there's areas where he has improved. But to your point, teams have no problem exploiting your weaknesses because if you look at Pro Football Focus on the percentages of like where teams got pressure on Arch last year, got pressure on the quarterback, 26.5% of the pressures came over left guard.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Nick Brooks and Connor Stroh for a good chunk of the year. Now, it got better when Cole Hudson got in there, but that's what, game 10? When Cole Hudson got in there, game 9? So the season over halfway over by the time you figured out, okay, this guy's our best option at left guard. Yeah, teams have no problems exploiting your weaknesses. You need to do a better job, a more consistent job, I'll say, of identifying those weaknesses for your opponent and going after them.
Yep. Totally agree. All right, that's enough. I got more stuff, but that's good stuff. I appreciate Jeff. Good stuff. Appreciate all you guys out there for watching and for listening. Thanks to Matthew behind the scenes, twisting and tweaking the dials. And we'll be back next week with another edition of Football Theory. For Matthew, for Jeff, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.